Oh. 5 rupees. This was supposed to revitalize the Tony Hawk franchise. It was first released in 2009. It really wanted to ride the Guitar Hero wave, and well, who can blame them? In 2010, Guitar Hero had pulled in like $2 billion. They really hyped this thing up too. You could be Tony Hawk. They called it the most advanced controller ever made. So how did it go? Yeah, not great. Let's see if we can use this to make other games more difficult to play too. Being an N64 channel, I want to try Ocarina of Time. Oh. 5 rupees. Open. Yes. Okay, let's go. Nope, okay. Why didn't you grab? First problem to solve. The N64 doesn't have a USB port. So I made this. Well, I made it a long time ago. If you follow the channel, you've seen this before. But either way, this is what connects the N64 to a USB device. I want to first talk about USB before we go into the specifics about this guy. Here's the host. That would be like your PC, or in this case, it's this little guy for me. The host is responsible for controlling everything. And it's a protocol where the host always initiates all transfers. A device will never start sending data unprompted. You can see a USB operates on the principle of having hubs, so you can split out into multiple devices, and so every device has a unique ID associated with it. There's up to 128 unique IDs, starting with 1. So in this situation, the hub actually gets its own ID, 1. Let's say the host needed the information from the game controller. So it would actually say, hey, I want to send a message to device 2. Another important thing, devices can have multiple endpoints. That's also a number. So let's just say this configured where endpoint 1 is where the input data is waiting for the host to receive on the joystick. So it'll say, I want to send to device 2, endpoint 1, I want to read the data. So it broadcasts that message, and the hub actually then sends that to everyone. The hub does not know which devices are which. So all the other devices ignore that, but device 2, the gamepad will say, hey, I'm device 2. So it will send data back on endpoint 2, and the hub just repeats that upstream. So let's actually plug this thing in and look at what the data looks like that it sends back to the computer. It's upside down. Still upside down. There. As part of that setup process, when the computer's talking to it on endpoint 0, if it's a hid device, you will get back what's called a report descriptor. The report descriptor just describes what data gets sent back. So we can see here's 13 1-bit values. Those are all the buttons along the side here. There is these 3 bits. This is actually just padding. It doesn't do anything because it wants to align the next 4 bits to a byte boundary, which is this hat switch here. So a hat switch is like a D-pad. So rather than being 4 separate buttons, it's a direction. So 0 is up, 7, and it goes around clockwise to 7 to the right. And then any other value other than 0 through 7 indicates that there's no direction inputted, so it's in its neutral state. And then 4 bits of more padding. These next section of bits, a lot of them are unused on this skateboard here. Of these 8-bit, it says generic desktop XYZ RZ. That's typically a joystick, or the 2 joysticks left and right, but not on this device. There is no joysticks. These are unused. And then some of these 8-bit values are actually the light sensors that go around the outside. And you get down to these last sections of bits, and again, the structure they define does not actually match the data. Let me just turn the skateboard on and I can show you what the data looks like. Ta-da! It's sending back data. Let's start pushing buttons. I want to show you. So you can see, as I push these buttons, these 2 bytes are changing right here. So you might be wondering, okay, well, the buttons are supposed to be bytes 1 and 2, or the first 2 bytes. Why is the very first byte just always 0? The very first byte is actually called the report descriptor ID. So if your device can send back more than one kind of data, like mouse and keyboard in the same device, the mouse data would be one report descriptor ID, the keyboard would be another. In this case, there's only one, so it's always 0. And then you can see the hat switch here, where that F is turning. So F means neutral state. And then I can push up to go to 0. You can see if I go clockwise around, it counts up to 7. And then here are these unused joysticks, these 8 zeros. There's 4 of them. That would be like, in the middle of the range of values. It would be like neutral state for joystick. That's what makes me think these are joystick values. They're just unused on this device. Then you have 4 unused bytes, and then here are the light sensors. So you can see these numbers here. When the light sensor is uncovered, you can see it's a low number. And when I cover it, it goes up to about 34. And so you have that, the front, the back, and then the two sides. So those 4 bits are the light sensors. And then this next bit was what's driving me crazy. It clearly was the accelerometer data, because I was able to, well, it looked like random gibberish. I don't know what to say, because this is kind of what my mind was like, trying to figure out how the heck do I interpret this data. I wasn't sure, was it some weird custom number format? Were they encrypting it? I just couldn't figure it out. I would plot data, I would do all kinds of things. It just wasn't working. I couldn't figure it out. So I eventually resorted to decompiling the Wii game to see if I could find the code that reads the sensor data. And in case you don't know what decompiling is, it's an attempt to reconstruct the original source code that produced a program. A compiled program is just a bunch of instructions that run on a CPU, not really readable by a human, whereas the source code is meant to be read by people. So it's really helpful to take what the program is trying to do and convert it into something a little more human readable. I use this tool called Ghidra. It lets you decompile binaries. So this is what it looks like when you first spit out the output. On the left here are just the raw assembly instructions. So you can see there are quite a few of them. This is an entire game's worth of functions. And on the right, it is the computer's attempt at reconstructing the source code that would produce this. And so you can see the functions don't have names, the variables don't have names, very unreadable. And you would hope that, maybe you can search it, but unfortunately, if I search for something like USB, well, there are a few strings in the code that reference USB, but trying to pull on those threads, it's like, okay, well, here's device USB, some data, and well, that's not in any function. Okay, well, anything else USB? And I was going down one by one, and I could just not find. Okay, well, you'll see right here it says USB device info. I added that. Before it was just random gibberish names, so it wouldn't have showed up in the search. I was about ready to give up until I had the idea, well, why not take the unique ID of the skateboard, so every USB device has a unique ID, and look it up in the code. Right here, here's this number 1430, that's hexadecimal. So I thought, let's just search for that. So searching this, it does produce quite a few results. So I was going down one by one, trying to see if any of these made sense. Most of these were just the automatically generated label of a function. But eventually got to this bit here. So you can see I named it search for skateboard. It wasn't named that before. So I pulled this up, and right around here was this code. So again, this variable, this device descriptor was gobbledygook before. I named it into something meaningful. And the code says, if this integer is equal to this number, the ID of the skateboard, and this is equal to this number, and if you look, come back to the device ID, that's part of the device ID. So clearly, this is checking for this info right here. So I'd found some USB code. That's great. Well, naming variables and navigating around, finding out which functions were calling this and which ones those functions called, I eventually found this function. Now, again, it was named something gobbledygook before, but I went ahead and cleaned it up, and well, this is the code that decrypts the sensor data. I had found it. I thought it would be a long shot decompiling a ROM to search for one function, but I found it. So with this, I was able to drop that code into my microcontroller. It decrypted the data, and I was getting good sensor data back. So I could work on the button mapping. And here's how I did the buttons. If you remember, this thing has 4 light sensors. So when you grab it, you can detect that. So I made the back one Z, front one C up, that's C right, and I put A on the side. There are also these buttons here I mapped to like L, and I also used A and B in those just as kind of simpler to access. And so this skateboard has 2 accelerometers. There's one in the front, one in the back. And so with the movement, I made it so with side-to-side movement, you just tilted the skateboard. Makes sense. Well, front to back, I found it really difficult to stand on the tip like this and then lean it side to side to try to steer while you're moving forward and back. But you also want to be able to walk forward and steer. So instead of making the Y-axis map directly, I had it accumulate. So for example, it starts in the neutral state, you're not moving, you tip the skateboard forward, you start walking forward, and then you put it back to the neutral state, and Link keeps walking forward until you tilt back to cancel that out. And so now, if I wanted to walk forward and steer, I could get him going and then steer, and that made it much easier to control. Lastly, I want to take advantage of the fact that this thing has 2 accelerometers in it, because normally if you tilt the skateboard, the accelerometers are filling the acceleration in the same direction. So to detect the sword swing, I made it so if you swing that, that's an important sound effect, you're now detecting as it swings this way, accelerometer pushes that way, and this one pushes the opposite direction. So I just detect if the X direction of the accelerometers diverge, I interpret that as a sword swing. So let's watch some gameplay. So here we go. Nope, 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 nope. If I get out of here, it'll be an accomplishment. Let's see if we can talk to Saria. Here we go. Nope, 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 back this way. Oh, almost. Oh, no. Okay, never mind, Saria. Oh. 5 rupees. Okay, Link, stop walking into the wall. Okay. Open. Yes. Okay, I think what I can do, I can switch over. Oh, I did it. There's too much gameplay footage to include in this video, so I made a separate one for that if you want to go check it out. I fight through the Deku tree, I beat Goma, so check that out if you want to see more. No, don't leave. Back in there, Link. He does not want to keep doing this. He's done. And that is how I played Ocarina of Time using a skateboard. And I'm probably not going to put much more effort into this USB project right now because I really want to focus on my game. I'm getting lots of good momentum going right now. I feel like the game is actually starting to feel like a game, and really it wouldn't be possible without all of you and the support of the Patreon members, which I am always grateful for. I'm really hoping that I can make an N64 game that recaptures the magic of 90s games. So if you want to follow that project, be sure to subscribe. As always, thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care.